Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you guys are at. I hope you're having a fantastic day. It's SoulSaint here. And yes, if you guys haven't already been paying attention, there's been a lot of news, a lot of things coming out in the woodworks to kind of give you guys a bit of a surprise with Chaos Awakens, if you guys haven't already seen this. Basically, there's a lot of news. We got event dungeons on the way. We got a new mythical, if you guys can see on the screen, as well as some other information. So I got a lot to break down. We're going to get right into it, and we're going to kind of just slam, all right? So basically, the event dungeon is coming back around with a brand new mythical. We are looking at Kurosa the Covetous. I hope I said that right. It's going to be a two-phase boss that's going to be support base in the base form, and then, of course, attack type on the second side. So a lot to expand upon. She's going to be bringing in new buffs. And you know what? Let's just go ahead and break it down. So she's a mythical support champion that's going to be a force to be reckoned with, for lack of better words, for the demon spawn. So force support. Her Surge of Chaos, this is her base form, just so you guys are aware. It attacks all enemies and it heals all allies. The value of the heal is going to be proportional to her champion's attack. So this champion's attack. So it's going to be her attack. And of course, her damage scaling is going to also increase by 20% with books. Anything for Siroth, which is kind of interesting if you guys know what Siroth the name is from. It's on a 4-turn cooldown, bookable down to a 3-turn cooldown, removes all debuffs from all allies, places increased attack and a shield buff on all allies for 2 turns. The value of the shield is also going to be based off of this champion's attack. So it seems to be like scaling off of attack seems to be pretty good, right? And then, of course, Running Rampant. Places a taunt buff and a 25% Fortify buff on this champion for 2 turns, and then also places Unkillable on all allies except this champion for 2 turns. So you get Unkillable, Fortify, and Taunt. Now, what is Fortify? So we actually have some new notes here. Fortify is basically a buff that reduces any enemy ignore defense effects by 15% or 25%. So since it says here in the kit, it's going to be a 25% Fortify, basically kind of neutralizing all ignore percent sets, for lack of better words, outside of maybe like Merciless that goes a little bit further beyond, you know? And even then, though, it's only going to drop it down to a point where you're only getting 5% ignore when you have the two collide with each other. So the difference is 5, right? It's crazy. It's crazy just to say that, you know? But, like, I'm going to go and keep reading her kit, and we'll kind of get more into on top of that. Her Metamorph, obviously, every mythical is going to have that. The Collector's of Pawns, though, that's going to be a 4-turn cooldown, so that means it has, like, a trigger effect. The passive side is basically all damage received is 15% less for each ally alive. So she receives 50% less damage for enemies alive. Or for each ally alive, sorry. So if you're in PvP, you're looking at 3 other allies, that's 15 by 3. And then, of course, if you're in other content where there's like 5 or 6, you can add even more on top of that. So really, really cool mitigation that she gets right off the rip. It's a little interesting considering that, like, you know, a lot of her stuff seems to be scaling off of her attack, which is what we're going to have to break down when we get to the second side of her form. But anyways, the active effect, which does have that 4-turn cooldown, instantly transforms this champion into their alternate form whenever they're the last one standing, basically. So when the last living ally is killed, she flips immediately as a part of her trigger, and that brings us to her second form. But her second form is also going to have an increased ally attack in all battles by 35%, which is what the base form has. Let's see what else they got going on over here. All right, so the second form is kind of interesting after being flipped from that passive. Destroyer of All, her A1. Now, mind you, she's now in a attack type champion stance with her second form. So 2 different form types, which means that she's going to be available in a lot of restriction content that's indicative for either or. So she could be in either or, since she's technically both. Destroyer of All, though, her A1 is going to attack one enemy 3 times. If this attack kills an enemy, it deals pure damage to all other enemies. If the other enemies are not bosses or minions, the amount of pure damage dealt is equal to 30% of the initial target's max HP. That's right. The pure damage that's dealt is equal to 30% of the initial target's max HP. If the other enemies are bosses or minions, though, the pure damage dealt is equal to 10%. So it kind of scales it down to like that limitation of any max HP hits going down to like 10%, which is still pretty nutty. And of course, this attack cannot be critical. I think they learned their mistakes from like Baron and some other champions that were just a little bit too hard in value. Maybe her multiplier is going to be ridiculous too as well. There's a lot of reasons why they make sure it's not critical, so it's not too like overpowered, you know. But you do get a book opportunity for this side of the kit, and you're able to put an extra 20% damage into that A1, which is pretty nasty. Icon of Havoc. It's a 3-turn cooldown. Attacks all enemies, but before attacking, it steals all buffs from all enemies. So it seems to be like we're getting away from like a buff meta because there's so much ways to capitalize off of it, for lack of better words. Targets whose attack is lower than this champion's attack cannot resist this effect. So basically, if you're able to build her up very, very strong, very, very well, no matter what, she's going to be able to strip that because she's just, it's irresistible. Also places a 25% weaken debuff on all enemies for 2 turns, and then, of course, if their attack is equal to or lower than this champion, the enemy, the targets, then it's irresistible as well. So basically, you benefit from behind building her up very, very strong. Because if your attack modifier is ridiculously high, then all your stuff is irresistible. So it's kind of busted, to be honest with you. And of course, you can book it for more damage as well as an extra little bit of ignore. I would say word to the wise is that you can kind of play it either way. If you want to play her towards her utility and make her fast and at the top of the turn as much as possible, then maybe you want to incorporate that accuracy to allow you to be able to do it, right? Whereas in other standards, if you're able to just make her as heavy of a hitter as possible, you kind of flat out ignore that anyways, right? So like you can kind of pick which style approach you want to go off of, and that's pretty cool. She could be like a utility buff stripper, but I think you could also lean in towards her damage too as well, and that may be valuable. And who knows, there might be some relics or some things like Death Dealer, for example, that may enable her to be able to build her damage to do like really pack a punch without having to worry about any other stat besides speed and maybe just pushing as much of her primary stat. So kind of nice. There's some combinations there. Ruthless Agent, 5-turn cooldown, which is bookable down to a 4-turn cooldown. It places a 15% shatter buff, that's new, and an 30% increased crit rate buff on this champion for 3 turns. Then places a True Fear debuff on all enemies for 1 turn. Targets whose attack is also lower than hers will also not be able to resist it. It'll be irresistible at that point, but it also grants her an extra turn. So it's a good setup buff. Now, what is Shatter? Shatter is a buff that increases a champion's ignore defense percent effects by 7.5 or 15. So there's variations to the Shatter buff. Of course, her being a myth, Kurosa being a mythic is going to allow you to have that big boy version, which is automatically she's going to get 15% ignored, which is crazy. That basically allows you to maybe mix and match some other types of builds or other type of set bonuses, and you can still accommodate getting ignore percent into your kit because she gives you a buff. Now, with that being said, we are seeing that there is a big version and a small version for both of those buffs, the Fortify buff as well as the Shatter buff, which means that it's a very strong possibility we may see future champions that have this same ability, just in a smaller form. So you may, maybe there's legendaries or maybe there's epics that are going to be coming up down the road that may incorporate that. So very, very curious, right? Now, as well, if you haven't already seen it, the book is down to a 4-turn cooldown when you have her fully booked. And, of course, the resistance, you don't need as much accuracy to land it if you are not going for that attack metric as a focus. I don't know. I would have to see what my account would be capable of doing. But I would be very curious to see if I could push a raw attack utility style approach champion. I don't know how you want to describe that. This is a very unique kit. It's cool. Of course, she has the metamorph as all mythicals do on both forms, but her passive, Vile Murderous, deals 50% more damage for each dead ally. And then, of course, each critical hit boosts this champion's turn meter by 10% for each dead ally. So, not only could she just constantly, do a lot of damage and it scales as people are dead on your team, but she's also picking up momentum from a speed standpoint, which makes it even more scary. That is disturbingly worrying, you know what I mean? So, I mean, in the summary words, I mean, if you have 4 people on your team, that's at least 4, or 3 people on your team besides her if you're doing PvP standards. I mean, that's turn meter by 30%. That's a 30% turn meter boost. That's crazy. Now, is that game changer enough? I can't really say because you had to plug and play her into the scenario to see how she feels. But I would say it's very unique. It's an interesting kit, and then, of course, her damage scaling, just allowing her to pack a punch right off the rip is kind of nutty, And I think that's kind of cool, too, as well. I mean, it can be a blessing and a curse depending on how you look at the base form of being forced to change over to your secondary form. But to be honest with you, at the same time, too, being able to give yourself and your people unkillable beforehand, maybe that could be the door opener that as people are falling off, she could kind of flip while she's still having that unkillable and then go aggressive, But here's the thing, though. Transforming her to her other side doesn't necessarily grant her turn, right? So she's kind of a little bit it's a very challenging approach to see her in action. I think that's going to be kind of interesting. Nevertheless, though, having another option for buff strips, which is possibly irresistible, is by far one of the most valuable things you can get in the game. I mean, that's why people go various different approaches, whether it's high accuracy on Marius or champions that do buff duration decreases, like Fabian, for example, or the ones that are just straight up trying to strip it. Think about your Madame Ceres or Odin, for example. You know, if we're going to scale it up a little bit, there are a lot of like interactions in the game that would somewhat deter certain strategies and certain effects and whatnot. But having something that's irresistible as an effect is by far one of the most tried and true ways to get around that 3% per se, or that accuracy versus resistance check that could be very promiscuous depending on your circumstance, you know? So it's a very, very unique way to say that this is a unique champion that's going to be very interesting getting your hands on. And you're going to be able to go against her. So if you guys have already heard that we're going to be having another set of events coming up where we're going to have the event dungeon come back in action. So if you haven't already seen it in the game, our event dungeon is currently closed, but that little spot on the dungeon side, let's see if I'm in game still. I think I have enough to kind of go over there real quick. I've been farming some stuff, you know? But like if you go to your dungeon team side and you see this little section here where it says coming soon, that's been vacated for a little bit, right? We haven't had it since, I want to say, the last Odin event or the last Queen of Heart event that came out, right? So like now it's coming back and she's going to be the headliner for this particular boss fight. So it's a two-phase fight, they said. I'm very curious to see what kind of strategies we can develop to kind of make it really work for us. Now, with that being said, I do want to talk about this in particular. They did say that also being forged in flames, Kurosa is now better protected from HP burn debuffs compared to previous bosses. She will only take 1% of her max HP as HP burn damage, which is unique to her only for the event dungeon. Now, when you get a copy of her for your own account, she's not going to have that effect. So your go-to strategy will be to bring strong support champions with no downtime on shields and healing to protect the team from big nukes, and powerful damage dealers to deal with Kurosa herself and her subject. So that's what the advice that we got when it comes to presenting this information. But I thought, nevertheless, it's really, really cool to see. Now, I want to take this opportunity. I'm going to disappear here for a brief moment, and I want you guys to be able to see her in all of her glory. This is her base form that you guys are going to be able to participate and see. And I think you guys are going to like the way she looks. She looks very diva-ish in her base form, and she looks like she's kind of like designed to be a tank in a sense. You know, you got that sword and what looks like to be like a hand axe. Yeah, it's basically an axe. I mean, it's not even a hand axe. It's a full-on axe. I was gonna say like a hatchet, but not even. But yeah, I mean, she looks really cool. I don't know if you see her her eyeball in the middle too. It's moving around, which is very, very, I don't know, it's a little creepy. It's a little creepy, but it's really cool design. I mean, you see the skeleton on the shield there. It's really, I don't know, I hate to say it, but like, Plarium/Raid, the developers for the design department, they don't miss. It's really cool. Also on her chest, right there in the center, you see that she has another eyeball that's like twirling around, looking around, observing the surroundings and whatnot. So it's kind of cool. And then, of course, we have her second form, which is going to be even more delightful to look at. I mean, you got the demonic angel wings, or demonic wings, you can call them. Very, very similar to like Lydia, but like the purple ore is crazy, you know? As well as like the tail. She kind of reminds me a little bit like Lamasu, but just elevated to another tier of just like evil maliciousness, you know? And I mean, that's kind of on par for like Demon Spawn as a faction, you know? Look at all of her eyes. Even though like her face inside what looks like to be a helmet is like kind of covered, you don't see her have any eyes, but if you look at like what would be like the helmet, which is actually a part of her head, she has like a bunch of eyeballs just looking in a bunch of different directions. Same thing with like her upper torso. I mean, this is just crazy design, and I got to give it to them. They knock it out of the park. They knock it out of the park, and I can't deny it's cool. It's pretty cool. So, with that being said, the event dungeon is going to be bringing back something that you guys have all enjoyed farming before, including myself, which is going to be Pinpoint. Pinpoint's coming back into the grind session. So, if you've been developing your builds and you've been trying to get better versions of those pieces, well, it's coming back, and it's a great... I'd say it's one of the better sets to get involved with, not only just for straight stat bloat. Maybe you're looking for accuracy and speed. I've been kind of like throwing a little bit of pieces here and there for like the factual progression. But it's also great for when you're dealing in the PvP side, trying to mitigate getting polymorphed, for example, with the intercept buffs, you know, having a 4-piece, a 6-piece, or even a 9-piece set. It's invaluable. It's very strong to keep you in play from getting controlled or from getting polymorphed, like we said before. So very strong assets there for us. Now, they did mention, and I'm going to go ahead and see if I can pull a screenshot of this image for you guys. available. Let me see if I can do that for y'all real quickly. I don't want to show too much here because I want to get some of the stuff here for you guys as well. But it's really, really cool to see that we have some new relics on the way. I'm going to pull up my good old paint here for this one. Yeah, they got some really cool relics that I think are going to be fantastic for you guys to see. Now, we don't have any specific information regarding this. Hold on here. Gotta focus here. They don't have any specific information, but the notes that we did get was that we are going to be able to have 2 rares, 2 epics, 2 legendaries, and 2 mythics for a total of 8 new exclusively themed relics for this campaign experience. So, during the campaign, players will be able to obtain these unique relic crafting materials in selected tournaments and events. Kind of, I would say, if you want to temper your expectations, very similar to like how we got the Masquerade mats for the Cat's Gaze, so Alice in Wonderland. The Cat's Gaze and the Hatter's Reserve, I believe it was. Those relics are going to be very similar in that same aspect where you can get a lot of the materials to be able to craft for relics. And you know, time will tell when we were able to see specifically more information regarding that. So I'm not entirely sure what else to expect in that, but the last set of relics that we got from the game, which have been pretty interesting here, there's a lot of like hive minding about their potential or like what they're going to be able to bring off, and we're going to get even more on top of that. Like, for example, Arachnelixir has been super impactful already in a lot of different ways, whether it's classic arena plat reset, live arena interactions. It's very unique, right? So we're going to get even more, and I have a feeling, and I'm assuming that they're probably going to be adding more like subsections. So you see how like they say Alice's Adventure, we might get one for what would be considered, I guess, Chaos Awakening. If you guys saw the little teaser trailer, maybe they call it Chaos Awakening or Chaos Awakes, or better yet, there may be one other thing that you guys will be able to see here, and this is a teaser. I don't really have too much to provide here, but maybe you guys can give me some examples of what you guys think may be for this one. This one, we're going to expand the canvas even further, and forgive me, I have to get these screenshots available for you guys to see, but Coalition event. An upcoming campaign will feature a brand new collaborative type of event in which collective efforts of all players is necessary to reach a shared goal. So it's going to be like a global event, it sounds like. More details will be shared soon. So we're also kind of on the speculative train here, but for the most part, I mean, look at this design here. I'm going to zoom in a little bit here. It looks like there's like a cathedral, and then some people going in there, and I can't really tell too much, but I'm going to just kind of go off the cup here and just speculate, and this is kind of like, I have no grounds or no proof to kind of go off of this, but when I look at this cathedral, a lot of it reminds me of elements of like Diablo, maybe. There's a lot of demon-esque themes that are kind of in play there that I think that could coincide with this whole aesthetic. I mean, the new mythic that we're getting is a Demon Spawn champion, so it kind of leans demon, you know, I'm kind of leaning in that trajectory, but it could also be some other type of content. Maybe there's something new coming out, and I'm trying to see if I could associate any type of ongoing games that are kind of new for promotional aspects, and I'm not entirely sure, but that's about as far as I could go. My first thought was like maybe there's something Diablo-esque coming out, or something themed around, you know, this like underworld, like hellfire-ish type style approach, and that kind of begs the question: what do you guys think is going to be the new coalition event, the new collaborative event that we're going to be going to experience? And I'm going to leave it to you guys to tell me what you think. And leave it in the comments below. I'm actually very, very curious to see. But with all that being said, that's kind of the news that we have so far. I mean, the new Kirosa Mythical looks to be very unique, very interesting, bringing new buffs to the game, too, on top of that, not to mention. And then we're also getting the Dungeon Diver, where we're going to have to fight her and battle her. With some extra caveats that, like, some of our more known effects and styles of approach are not going to be as effective, like HP burn. So that route's going to be kind of a little bit more harder to tinker with, right? And then, of course, on top of that, we're going to get the collaborative event. So with new relics and old accessory sets that are been tried and true and valuable, I wonder what you guys think about this so far. Are you guys excited to see what's going to be coming on for us? How hard is it going to be to acquire this Kirosa champion? I'm all ears. I think for the most part, I'm excited, and I'm looking forward to being able to farm some more pinpoint for my account, as well as explore whatever this coalition event is going to be. So with all that being said, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and let me know what you guys think in the comments. I'm very curious to see y'all's speculative, informed thoughts and theories. But with that being said, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and as always, always remember, stay ascended.